we get to have this awareness of ourselves and how we move through the
Mhm.
world. And, our parents' generation maybe didn't get that. Our grandparents' generation certainly didn't get that. And so I feel like we're kind of getting to reach back through time and be like, wait a minute, like maybe I wasn't indoctrinated in these ways, but I'm still carrying the weight of what my ancestors went through.
You are listening to The Poetry Table, a segment of the Gather Poets podcast where I take you inside conversations with bold and gutsy poets, exploring their craft choices, the questions, and the lived experiences that shape their poems. I'm your host, Maria Giesbrecht, a poet and the founder of Gather Poets, a writing community for poets worldwide. My guest today is Dre Pontbriand. Dre is a queer Mexican-Canadian poet, alchemist, and herbal bruja who loves wildlife, moonbathing, and dismantling oppressive systems. Her work has been published or is forthcoming in SWWIM, PRISM, Gnashing Teeth, and others. She is currently working on her debut poetry collection. I'm so excited to be here with you today, Dre. Welcome.
Thank
How are
you.
you feeling and how are you settling in?
I'm feeling great. I'm really excited to share this poem with the world. It's not really a poem that I necessarily liked writing because it's about some kind of crunchier things, but I think it's an important message, so I'm happy to share it.
Absolutely. I think listeners will very much resonate with a lot of the themes, but also I think they're going to be curious to hear about some of the choices that you made with the poem. But I won't rush
Yeah,
us. Will you start with reading your poem for us, Dre?
absolutely. Okay, granddaughters of Lilith. Abuela stood in the back at church, nailed so many crooked portraits of saints on walls I thought they were family. She kept dried palm leaves by the entrance, an angel above every door, wings broken from all the times the earth quaked. And I kid you not, a 3-foot tall ceramic statue of San Judas Tadeo in the corner of the bedroom. When she sent me to get her coin purse for trips to the candy store, the sepulchre eyes clung to my tiptoes. I was there, an egg in an ovary choked up on myrrh incense in the sterile confessional stall when, with my mom on her lap, she told the man-appointed messenger that she needed to get on birth control. The doctor said I won't survive another one. I'll make orphans of my children. He pointed to the door. You defy God's will. You're not welcome here. Mom asked too many questions. When the nun said only those who follow Jesus get a place in heaven, her clay-colored hand shot up. Jesus said to love one another. Where in the Bible does he mention this condition? She wrote, I will not question God's word as chalk turned to dust over her bloody knuckles. She burnt her diaries, believed thunderbolts would strike down her wishes for streetlight first kisses. She lost the deposit on the earth that would hold their bones together when her husband slipped his wedding band off and disappeared into the night. She sought solace in a man called father. You defy the sanctity of God's union. You're not welcome here. Trauma alters DNA, affecting successors for 3 generations. When they dunked my still soft head in sanctimonious water, I got food poisoning. I felt the weight of white. You're not welcome here.
Hmm. Oh, I have full body chills, Dre. There's so much power in that poem, but hearing you read it out loud is like the most I think of the word for me feels like um I use this word a lot, but I really feel it is like visceral. And
Mm,
when you read the line, I was there, I think to me that felt like a call to witness. Like when we as readers read another poems, like that is an act of witnessing. And I think more than anything, when a poem is about something that is like generational, even just a witness is enough to sort of change the tide or enough to move the needle slightly in another direction.
mm.
Um, I'm curious, Dre, when you were writing this poem, what was your interior world like? And also, what was your exterior world like? And do you remember what was happening around you while you were writing this poem?
Mm. So This poem, like a lot of my poems, I have kind of a interesting creative process where I'll just be like in the shower or out for a walk and a line will just come. And that
Mm,
line was the weight of white. And I got to
mm,
really kind of connect with what that's meant within my own family structure, particularly with the women. And it just kind of took on a life of its own from there. As I said, it's not my poems where I touch on themes of religion are a little crunchier for me. Like they're not, some of your poems you read them back and you're kind of like, ooh, juicy, I like this. Like those ones for me are a little bit more like it's almost like I didn't write it. It was like I'm being
mm,
written. So
mm,
I just kind of, as I hold space for my mom as she ages, as I kind of like, connect with my ancestors and all of that, I see it so clearly. I see the weight of white and I see how it's trickled
mm,
over into my own life. And so I think I was just trying to kind of give space for that to be witnessed.
mm. I think that's so wonderful. And I love the line about the DNA and the three generations. Um, Um, I think, like, I think I knew that fact somehow, like, there was a maybe there's an article that we had both read or something about that, like, it actually does change your DNA, which is, like, wild and also but not surprising at all to me that our bodies carry the proof of survival amongst generations. Um, in what ways, if any, does poetry feel like maybe um, a rupturing of that for you? Or does it feel like your poetry is maybe um, giving a space for that sort of tension to exist without carrying it onto the next generation? Or do you think that maybe that's even possible? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of us, a lot of women, especially during this time, we are kind of the pattern interrupters. We are kind of those like sacred disruptors that are coming in to you know, we get to have this awareness of ourselves and how we move through the
Mhm.
world. And, our parents' generation maybe didn't get that. Our grandparents' generation certainly didn't get that. And so I feel like we're kind of getting to reach back through time and be like, wait a minute, like maybe I wasn't indoctrinated in these ways, but I'm still carrying the weight of what my ancestors went through. And through giving that a voice, through putting it onto paper, there is this kind of alchemical process that gets to happen where it's like, okay, it doesn't live in my cells anymore. Like any
Mhm.
children that I have, any future generations that I come into contact with, I will not pass this on anymore because I'm like shining a light on it. And like the
Mhm.
darkness can't exist when you shine a light on it, right? So it does feel like this necessary interruption that is demanding um to be felt through the poem.
Yeah, like I think about it almost like another generation. eh, So we kind of, I believe we give birth to poems. So maybe when we give birth, I'm just thinking out loud right now, maybe when we give birth to our poems, it's like, that the things that are passed generation to generation, they're felt less and less and less and less by each generation. Maybe our iteration of that is giving birth to that trauma through poetry. And then that poem is the vessel that now holds it. And we kind of have to like trust it too. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of trust that happens between poetry and stuff that we've gone through and then kind of like give it to the world, which is so scary to do, I think, for a lot of people. And for like it's terrifying, right? Um, but I think that like nothing changes if we don't do that. Um, if that moment doesn't happen. But yeah, I love
Yeah.
that line so much. It's one of my favorite ones. I'm curious to talk a little bit to you about the craft of your poem as well, Dre, because
Mhm.
you are very, I would say, from reading just this poem and also your other poetry, you have a natural knack for certain choices in the way that you craft poems that I think is interesting.
Mhm.
I'm curious why this poem wanted to be a prose poem and how that did it was that its first iteration. Did you originally
Mhm.
start writing it as a prose poem or did it evolve?
Yeah, so I do have to shout out my editor on this a little bit, who has really kind of helped me get my head around form a little bit more. I would kind of always just stanza it up, and
Hmm.
as I went through drafts and stuff with her, I realized that it was actually easier for me if I kind of just started with a bit of a prose block and then seeing where it wanted to go. But with this one specifically, from the beginning, I was like, this is a prose block, and not only is it a prose block, it's like a justified prose block to sort of echo
Mm.
that feeling that the women in my family have had with these, very like dogmatic restrictions around their lives. And so
Mm.
there wasn't really another iteration for this one. Sometimes with other poems I do kind of play around and like, oh, what's the best form? But with this one, I was like, no, it's this box. We're stuck in the box, and um,
Mhm.
that really kind of echoes the message of the poem.
Yeah, I think that definitely shines through. And also, because it's a narrative poem, you're telling a story in your poem. I find that sometimes a prose poem is really beautiful um, for a narrative poem because sometimes when we're reading a story, we have a hard time not being drawn to things like line breaks and stanza breaks. Oh, I don't know why my computer just like had a weird moment. Okay, I'm gonna edit that out. Okay, I was saying that sometimes I think when we're reading narrative poems, um, we or I don't anyways, I don't like to notice things like line breaks and stanza breaks because for a moment it kind of takes me out of the story of the poem. It's like if you're
Mhm.
reading a fiction book, I don't necessarily want to stop and think about why did the author decide to break the line here for this story. So I actually really like, and maybe some poets are different and they have a different opinion on that, but I really love I think a beautiful marriage is a prose poem and a narrative poem because they go so beautifully together in my opinion. Um, that leads me to ask you a question. Do you ever experiment with like lyrical essay or like even flash fiction? Um, I just like I see this for you, Dre. I don't know why.
So not flash fiction. I actually kind of got started writing with essays. And I really like what you said about lyrical essays. I kind of, when I was writing essays, and this is what I love so much about poetry, is that it kind of took me out of when I wrote essays, I was very much in this kind of like prove my arguments, like this very kind of like scholarly approach that
Mhm.
felt really kind of disingenuous. Like it was well written, you know what I mean? Because I was like following all the rules, but
Mhm.
it lacked that kind of rawness. And so and honestly, if you had asked me like 5 years ago, what's gonna be your genre of choice, I never would have said poetry. Like I had connected with the poetry that was just kind of very elitist and very like,
Mhm.
like just kind of stuffy and rigid. And um it wasn't until I started discovering some more contemporary poets like Andrea Gibson, like Megan Fowley, like
Mhm.
Dorianne Locks, like all of these people that I was like, oh, this is like, I mean, you could lie in a poem, but it's not going to be good. Like it
Yeah.
demands this level of truth that
Mhm.
is really really constructive for people who like to hide behind language like me sometimes. So it has been kind of a deconstructive process, but there is a part of me that does miss a little bit the freedom of what gets to happen with an essay. So I will take that
Mhm.
as an invitation to kind of explore what a lyrical essay would look like now, having gone through, finding my voice with poetry.
Yeah, no, honestly, and a lot of people say that a lyrical essay and a prose poem are like one and the same. And even flash fiction, if it's written really well, I think sometimes can mirror like a beautiful narrative prose poem. So I think
Mhm,
genre is this like container that's very fluid and we can just jump in and out. And I love like hybrid work where people try to mix two like I think that's
mhm,
so unique and cool to exist in between things. The space in between, I feel like that was my like thought of last year. Like my framing, maybe like idea was just like how much I really love to be in between things, because it's really uncomfortable. But you get the best of both when you're in between two things, even though.
mhm.
Because most people ask you to choose between them, and I think it's a brave and a cool thing when someone decides not to choose between two things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can definitely see like elements of that essayness or that lyrical style coming through your poetry, and I really really enjoyed it.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
I'm curious, Dre, how your writing practice has evolved. So we've kind of chatted about how you started in poetry,
Mhm,
or you started in writing more personal essays, and then drifted towards poetry as a tool for distilling and having to really get down to the nitty gritty truth.
mhm.
The actual practice of writing, how has that changed for you throughout the years?
Mm. Well, it is definitely an ever evolving process. Like literally just yesterday I was like like pressing up against the creative process in kind of crunchy ways, which still happens. But um I definitely feel like I've been learning to hold it all more lightly. I think that there
Mm,
are a lot of rules, that were kind of shown, through school and even through craft books that have really good intentions, but they kind of restrict us and they put us in this like little box in terms of how we're supposed to be doing it. Oh, you need to write your morning pages
mhm,
every single day. You need to do this thing every single day. If you just do this every day. And I think that there's something to be said for just realizing that most of the writing is not sitting down at the computer. It's living your life. It's going
mm.
outside. It's staring at a bird. It's like being like, "Oh, what plant is this?" It's in those little micro moments that the things get written. And even yesterday I
Yeah.
found myself like sitting with a draft from my editor being like, "Oh, I can't get it." And I was like, "Let me just go do something completely unrelated to all of this." And sure enough, boom, there it is.
Mhm.
And so I think it's just and it's kind of a little bit what this poem is about. It's like the feminine kind of the muse energy that just wants to be free. And then it's kind of like
Mhm.
thrown into this box where it feels restricted. And personally, my muse, when she feels like I'm suffocating her, she's like, fuck you, I'm not giving you anything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just, yeah, it's a lot of learning to dance with the energy and holding it
Yeah.
lightly.
Ooh, I love that. I resonate with that so much. The idea that the more I chase my muse and the more I just chase, I think, creativity in general, there's an elusive element to it and it wants to run away. Um,
Mhm.
a long time ago, I wrote a Substack article on like how to seduce your writing or your poetry. And I do think there's like an art to seducing the muse as well. Like sometimes I light candles and then like I try too hard, and then the muse is like, like
It's too
it does not like that.
much.
And then it comes randomly, like on a morning when I'm just living my life, right, Dre? Like we just have to keep
Exactly.
living our life.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a therapist friend, she reflected this to me and I hadn't clocked this one yet. But she was saying how like she's just like given up on a lot of craft books because they're still and she comes from like an experience of being in like a religious cult for a long time and she's like these are all still really Bible coded. Like it's still like if you do
Mm,
this then you are good and you will succeed. If you do this then you are bad. And I was like, "Oh shit, like that actually does feel kind of true for me in some
yeah,
ways." So I'm just kind of like, take what serves you and leave the rest, like play with what feels
yeah.
good and let the muse breathe a little bit.
And the word play, I think, is key there. Like, it
Yeah.
should feel expansive, not reductive. Like, it should feel like your world is getting bigger when you think about these things, the possibilities of what could be in a poem that should excite us. And like, it's like the possibility of a great date happening. It like stirs something within you. But if it's like, yeah, reductive, like, oh, we're gonna go to this like chain steakhouse or something. I don't know. That to me, like, I don't
Yeah.
love that idea. That sounds awful. um,
Exactly.
but yeah. Well, Dre, it's been so lovely chatting about your poem. I can't wait to publish it. For folks listening in on the Gather podcast, Dre's poem will be published this Friday when this podcast goes live. And stay tuned for a full written interview with Dre as well on our Substack. Dre, I always am curious if you could think of one word that you would like to leave the readers of your poem with, what would it be?
Mm. Notice, like just an
Mm,
invitation to notice the little undercurrents and the ways in which we are redirected from connecting with our own concept of God, with our own source of power, with our own being.
that's a
Yeah.
beautiful call. If you're listening, take a moment to notice. That's Dre's invitation.
Cool.
Where can we connect with you online if we want to read more of your work or just maybe say hi?
Yeah, absolutely. I love connecting with new people. My Instagram is the best place. The.dre.verse. I've been a little more quiet, but I do have some things in the works that I'm going to be putting out here shortly. So yeah, that's the place.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Poetry Table. If you're curious about Gather, feel free to find us on Instagram at Gather Poets, and we look forward to connecting.